welcome to the tie-in. I'm Zena Harris, and this is Mark Rabin.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon.
And I'm Andre Champagne.
All right.
Thank you all for being here for our first live
welcome.
recording.
That was our theme song.
That was our theme song. Yes, by the lovely Peter Chapman.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for being here. This afternoon, we're speaking with Andre Champagne. And Andre is an entrepreneur, producer, longtime fixture in Hollywood and film production. He's also an innovator with Hollywood Trucks and the Ecolux line of clean energy trailers, which at its peak had a fleet of 400 units, of which 45 of them were the Ecolux units, which first entered the market in 2014. So an early innovator. And these commercial grade trailers were used by many celebrities, including, but not limited to, Brad Pitt, Dwayne Johnson, Reese Witherspoon, Sandra Bullock, and James Cameron. And I met Andre in 2017 when I was told by Shannon Bart, at the time was Universal Studios. She was like, you need to meet the other guy who's doing renewable energy in film. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So she set up a coffee date for us at Universal, and we met, and we were like, okay, we were speaking the same language. And so, and then here we are today. So we'll look forward to talking to Andre about his adventures.
Yeah, I met Andre in 2018 on the set of Avatar in Manhattan Beach Studios, because James Cameron was using your trailers, the Ecolux trailers, and I was there with Lisa Day. Some of you know her, and she was excited about what Andre was doing, what we could do with it on the show. And you were there, and you took us all the way through and showed us all the nuts and bolts of that trailer. So yeah, known you since 2018. So welcome to the tie-in. So just to get us started, Andre, let's just dive into your story. How did you get into trailers in the first place? How did you come to this?
Well, I mean, gosh, let me make it brief then. First of all, I mean, it came by accident, to be quite frank. You know, I was producing films. I was building I decided, okay, I'm gonna produce this film down in Louisiana. I'm originally from New Orleans, you know, and I was looking for infrastructure, and there wasn't any there. So I said, okay, I'm gonna buy a couple of vehicles, rent them to the film. That'll be great. And then what occurred through that was I began to really love the transportation side of it, and we bought a couple of vehicles, and then other people asked for more and more, and we bought more and more and more of them. And it grew simultaneously with the business. So, you know, those economic development programs like credits and stuff are unbelievably important. But, you know, it was something that when we decided to start working on the trailers specifically, it was because as I was building, I remember vividly, it was like 2009. I was standing on set, and as many of you know, very familiar with production, I was standing right between 218 amp plants, you know, production plants that run, like some of the individuals were talking about earlier, burning literally a gallon of fuel each per minute. And I sat there and I just went, we have to do something better. Like, this is ridiculous. You know, not only from obviously the first part being financial, because you're watching money go up in smoke, but more importantly, I just watched the smell, you know, saw just all the fumes. And I said, an entire base camp running off of it. And I said, you know, I got to do something. And at that time, there were no OEMs. You're talking 2008, 9, 10, 11. You know, no OEMs were producing electric chassis. So you couldn't get even, let's say, like a Ford Econoline pass van and electric. You certainly couldn't get class 2 or 3 vehicles like crew cab 5 tons and things like that in electric are even close to like a semi, you know, a 53-footer. So I was like, well, how am I going to change something if I don't have the capital to obviously build, you know, the next gigaplant, you know, but let me see what I can start working on. And the trailers were the only other part. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start with the trailers. And I didn't know what I didn't know at that time, you know, and started ripping the roofs off of a couple of them. And, you know, I was excited because I was like, okay, I'm going to throw this panel on, put a PV panel on the roof, you know, 200 watts. I can run the 12 volts. So like, all right. and then I put a couple more panels, and I was like, all right, now I can power the TVs and the 12 volts, and then I was like, well, why can't I power this entire thing? And not knowing what I didn't know, that would be like the next 7 years of my life, literally going through every facet of it, reinventing the HVAC system, building the lithium ion batteries, living in China for a couple of months looking for parts, missing all my son's baseball games, getting electrocuted twice, like trying to forgetting to turn a breaker off when you're in, and it starts raining, so, but I loved it, every part of it. Once I saw them run, at the moment I saw it run by itself, the whole thing, I was like, that's it. This is what I'm doing.
So you're telling us that you can't just pop some solar panels on a trailer and call it good?
You can, but the difference is, I like to say, anyone can throw it. Look, PV is amazing. Use it as much as you can. It's fantastic. But the difference between putting a solar panel on a trailer, RV, whatever you might call it, or a 53-footer or anything like that, one thing. Building a vehicle to maximize a system that allows something to run autonomously on its own power for extensive amounts of time is a completely separate undertaking. And so we spent time, the vehicles that we build, we start from the ground up, because every single watt that asset consumes matters, because you have to multiply it times 24. So if you're going to take something off grid, if let's say you've got an inverter that's in sleeping mode and it's still consuming 40 watts just sitting there running, that's times 24. And so what happens is we began to really focus. We said, we got to build these things from scratch. And that involved every single part. So not only developing our own lithium ion batteries, but more importantly, just the refrigerant value of the entire vehicle. What types of water heaters you were using, what types, every part, to maximize that system. And then we didn't stop there. We really took a holistic approach, because, and I don't want to scare everyone here, but if you actually sit in the vehicles that we sit in production, they are not clean at all. And what I'm talking about is, I was shocked by it, because it was something that I learned. I'm talking about off-gassing and just VOCs and things that we've got some of the highest profile people in the world sitting in, I call it like carbon monoxide saunas, And what happens is we wanted to change that. So we focused on every part, from the paints, the plastics, the ceiling being made from 3,000 recycled, plastic bottles, to the HVAC systems to HEPA filtration and everything. So all of it was around making a cleaner, safer vehicle for everyone.
So now you have a burgeoning fleet here. It's 2014, 2015, 2016. What does it look like to introduce these into the market? Are you getting pushback? Are you having to come up with a different marketing campaign? What was the demand at the time, or did you just have to create the demand?
We had to create it, because it was extremely difficult at that time, for a couple of reasons. First of all, the first thing is that, production is notoriously a stringent, strict environment. You are putting assets into something, a standard RV, you buy it, you take Billy and, Sally out for, a couple of weekends, boondock, and you might use it for 10% of the year. Production, we're using it 18 hours a day, multiple different operators, it's not owner operator. So it's used by a bunch of different individual people. So for me, I was doing a couple of things in congruent fashion. The first thing was that we now had an invention that we felt like, okay, this is really fantastic. It can make a substantial difference. But first of all, now we've only got one of them, that's not going to make a big difference, but then we started building 2, 3, 4, 5. And once we had gotten, every one that I built, they become like your kids, when you're building these vehicles, that you love every one of them for what it is. And each one got a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. But we were, we were a small business. So for us, we just wasn't like we had an R&D fund, and we could set aside a couple $1,000,000 just to build a couple and throw them away. Every one of these had to work. But at that time, I didn't even realize what it was doing is it was making us a better company and a better product, because every one that we built, I still had to push it out into the rental market. And so that was, now you're going to the majors, you're knocking on the doors of, everyone, presidents of production would send you over to sustainability. And at that time, sustainability was just like, oh yeah, back office on the left, kind of thing. It wasn't what it is now, so I'd go and at that time there were really, amazing people, Shannon Bart, Lisa Day, all these individuals that became like my, my green army, and so we were trying to get it into production. And then once you could even get it on the set, if you were fortunate enough, because you had to bypass the transportation coordinator, the UPM, the production manager, everyone, the next question was, does it even work? And so that was a whole separate side. So you had to go through that trials and tribulations of, you build one, it works for a little while, or it might, and at that time there were, mobile lithium ion batteries were, almost like this, new mystical product. So we were using AGM, which is absorbed glass mat and stuff. So, and also, in the first iterations, I wasn't able to control them OTR. So like we could not control them,
Over the air.
Yeah. And so, I couldn't tell what they were doing, how they were doing, were people operating them correctly? Were they not operating them correctly? So, I mean, the long and short of it, it was a battleground. You know that. Yeah. I mean, we were on set at the same time, I mean, it was not easy. But thankfully, people began to listen, and when they saw, and slowly but surely, as each one got a little bit better, you start winning over one production at a time, and then you start building more and more of them. And then once you could, the real tipping point, it was when we could really quantify the data. So when I could speak to them, over the air, and I did have the data, and I could show the studio, here is the reduction in fuel. This is third-party quantifiable. That's when we saw a real change. But at that time, it was really, really scary, to be quite frank, because we were putting all of the capital of the company into a product that we had no idea if we knew it was something cool, and fun, and it was great for the environment and all those things, and it was so cool to watch them run, and they're silent and all these things. But we didn't know, when you're basing a whole business model diverting off of a tried and true model, which is standard film and television transportation rentals. That was not, there were many sleepless nights, hard board meetings. I mean, people, even the RV companies, like looking at it like, you were out of your mind, man. Like, what are you doing,
You can barely see solar panels in RVs even today. Starting to be, but it's still.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. We were just talking about that. I mean, there's not a major RV manufacturer right now to date that I can say builds 100% energy autonomous asset. Like, it's still a massive market for disruption.
So as you were getting this off the ground and you're entering a world of diesel and generators and, and you're sort of reinventing this model and rethinking how you do HVAC and rethinking about what's going into these trailers. I mean, along the way, are you like patenting this stuff? How did that piece work?
The intellectual property side was, a great learning process as well. Yeah. So, when we built the first models in like 2013 and 14, at that time it was almost more of, I was, let's call it, I'd always say I was out in the factory, just, playing with panels and stuff. But once we got to where they really started to work, then standard corporate attorney's law, you should file patents for this and this. And so I sat there, in the legal office for a week and a half, drawing everything, writing it and all that, and then, okay, here you go, guys. And so we filed it, and that was like 2015, I think, and you kind of file them and put them away. And you just go about your business, because sometimes that process can take a long amount of time. And then, lo and behold, we get gosh, I'll never forget this as long as I live. It's a small story I have to tell you, because we had an office at Pinewood, Atlanta, and in Atlanta, Georgia, and we had filed all the patents, and I'm standing there, and we were building a new office, and I'm out in the parking lot, and there's like all this gravel everywhere, and it just starts. I'm talking to my attorney, who forwards me an email, and he says, "Hey, Andre, man, we really believed in it. It was amazing. I think you might have something here, whatever. But we just got a notice back from the patent office, and they turned it down." And I was just like, I sat there, and it started raining on me again, as well. And I literally
add to the drama.
Yeah, I'm standing. I'm looking at my phone. It starts raining on me. He calls and tells me that, and I'm like, let me look at this email. And I'm literally just starting to bawl cry, because that was 4 years of my life. And I was like, there's no way. I've looked everywhere, everything. I mean, no way. And so I pull up the email, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, this is approved. What the hell? So I get him back on the phone, and I'm like, you need to read this thing, and by the way, you're fired as the attorney, But they were all the claims, every part of it were all approved, and so that whole process for me just became a learning experience. And so now, to answer the question, yes, all the vehicles achieved patents, all the claims were approved. There was multiple ones, I've gotten to the point now where I love it. So for me, I write them almost every day. So, just this past week, I've written 3 more that I'll file that I believe is going to have a material impact on how production operates and how the vehicles operate, and that'll be exciting for me to, bring them into the marketplace, and it makes the whole puzzle fit. So when you sit at base camp, everyth's got to work together, and so I think once these other patents go through, combined with the trailers, combined with the OEMs, you're going to walk on base camp very soon, and you'll never hear an ICE-based asset run again.
An ICE is internal combustion engine asset that we all know and are used to.
So in 2019, the company was sold, and the assets were sold, dispersed wherever. You're restarting Hollywood Trucks. It's starting again. You're hearing it here. What do you think's changed now? I mean, has a lot changed? Has not a lot changed? Because now we're 4 or 5 years in the future.
Yeah, well, and so in 2019, what we did is we sold the tangible assets. So I call it my, R&D fleet, because it was the, petroleum-based assets, my first iterations of all the vehicles. And we were fortunate to sell those, but we retained all the intellectual property, so the patents, the trademarks, and those things, And so now, and then I had 4 and 5 year non-competes and stuff. So, during that time, it was really interesting to watch the evolution of our business. We went through some very difficult times, obviously with COVID, and then, with labor issues and strikes and stuff, But also during that time, it wasn't like I was sitting on the sideline, So for me, it was a great time just to dive deep into technology, what was out there, what could we implement, when I came back out. And so for now, I have the ability, thankfully now, to, I call it recapitalize the company. So, to take all of the prior intellectual property, but combine it with the new IP, and then build a brand new fleet from scratch. And so I say that, everything in the business, I mean, look, to be quite frank, we were very early very early. We were 10 years earlier. And, you know, we had an off-grid base camp in 2015, 16, you know, every vehicle. So, you know, was it a little too early? Yeah, I think it was, you know, because not all the pieces were there yet. Now, thankfully, what we've seen is, you know, as I rebuild the entire business plan, you know, is that, okay, now we've got great IP that we can utilize. We've got new IP as well. We've got individuals that are listening, you know, the studios are listening, the general, you know, sustainability is a different word now, you know, it's powerful, it means something, you know, and so I look at every metric that we had from a business perspective, and rental rates, thankfully, have gone up. Asset costs, interestingly enough, have gone down, because when we were building these, you know, a standard, let's say, two-room talent trailer, you know, for us was costing right around $175,000 US. And that's because the batteries, we had developed our own batteries. They were $6,700 a piece. You know, the solar was a lot more expensive. You know, we were using LG Chem panels. They were about $400 a piece. You know, so all of those costs were up. Well, now what's happened is you can build a really amazing shell. And you know, a lot of these patents were utility patents too. So as technology continued to improve, all of the parts continue to improve. So the batteries get more efficient, they get smaller, the inverters get more powerful, the PV gets more powerful. The HVAC was probably the real, you know, for those of us and, you know, that really, you know, live in these vehicles, heating and air conditioning is the greatest power consumption on the vehicle itself. So, you know, technology in those areas has enhanced as well. And we spent a lot of time developing our own HVAC system so that, you know, it ran very, very efficiently. So I see a dramatic positive shift in, you know, as I relaunch the company, I almost feel like it's like, okay, now this is the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the down times of COVID for our industry, you said you were out there looking around. You were learning more. You were not just on the sideline. What did you learn in that time, and how is that being used now as you relaunch the company?
Yeah, I mean, you know, technology really is the rate limiting factor to how fast we can completely saturate our industry with clean, you know, with clean vehicles, respectively. So, you know, what occurred is you had a lot more of the OEMs, and when I say the OEMs, you know, your Ford, Peterbilt, you know, all of these companies, Rivian, Tesla, you know, any of them that are building the chassis, or what I call the propulsion side. Mm-hmm. You know, these guys, some of them came to market, you know, they were never there before, you know, and they weren't there in different classifications. So even electric vans, you know, and things like that. So yeah, we saw that come to the forefront, you know, and granted, there's still a significant, you know, growth pattern there. But also what I saw was on the technology side as well. Like for instance, when we first, you know, we were really one of the first, if not the first, company to put mobile lithium-ion batteries in a trailer safely. And so when I say safely, is that took a significant amount of time, you know, just because that's the main thing, you know. I mean, it's one thing to have great tech, but you know, it's not really a good marketing perspective if you've got trailers out there, you know, catching on fire or, you know, or anything like that. So anything we ever built, safety was the first metric across the board. But what you're going to see now is that PV panels are getting stronger, you know, and when I say stronger, efficiency ratios. So I always tell people, I mean, you can imagine in a world if you, you know, if you move the efficiency of standard PV panels going to be between 19 and 22% efficiency. That's not very high. Yeah. You know, I mean, that's a major area that can change. Imagine if you had a panel that was producing 80% efficiency. I mean, the amount of power you can generate from I think it's like 174,000 terawatts of power per second that the sun's hitting us with. would be gigantic. But also, I think on the mobile lithium side too. Obviously, there's lots of different chemistries out there. Whether it's cobalt or iron phosphate or tetnate or any of these other. You're going to see those shift into solid state. Where you've got a safer type of a very safe battery with a really remarkable amount of efficiency and ability to hold a substantial amount of power. And so if you just move those two metrics, like the PV to 80% and solid state in the vehicle, you'd have an energy autonomous asset for years, potentially perpetuity.
So on those lines, we've seen all these portable power stations out there. We're seeing a lot of movement in the space. What's your vision for in 15 years out here, the set of the future?
Oh, that's cool. I just, if you can take for a moment and just think and just walk with me down this path, like you're going to walk on set 15 years, you said 15 years?
15, 30.
All right. Well, that's a lot.
10,
Or how
10,
soon
yeah.
do you think this is, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like 10, 5? What, I mean, our industry,
5 and 10s. I mean, like the
is
tech is there.
evolving.
Yeah, the tech is there,
Yeah.
so 5 and 10. So, I even say in less than 3, you're going to walk out, and you're going to have an entire base camp with, let's say, every single one of the, let's say 1 rooms, 2 rooms, 3 rooms, wardrobe, hair, makeup, everything, all with solid state in it, all with PV on the roof, and so all connected into so the new fleet that we're building and launching, every one of them can, what we call, DC to DC fast charge or actually interlock into each other. So, you're going to see that combined with take a 53-foot semi trailer, that can already hold a substantial amount of a battery bank in there. Let's say that's solid state. Combined with, you've got approximately 9,000 watts of power on the roof, tied into a Tesla Semi, which is sitting there with a megawatt of storage right now on that truck. So again, let's think about this. You've got, let's say, 30 vehicles at base camp. You've got probably 5 semis. That's 5 megawatts of storage right there already. Plus the additional every single one of those trailers, you probably add another 3 megawatts. So now you're at 8 megawatts of power just sitting there with 100,000 watts of power on the roof. So I believe the chance that you'll ever, quote, hear a generator run again is really going to become obsolete very quickly, and you're going to have so much residual power at that base camp that you could even, for us, it's all mathematical. So, you can tell how long a trailer is going to run, quote, autonomously, or I call it energy autonomous. Like, autonomous driving's cool, but autonomous power is really cool. Yeah, so you can tell mathematically how long that vehicle is going to run without, even let's say an ounce, or a watt of power from the roof. So I think you're going to get to the place where, very quickly. For me, I can't speak too much to it, but I'd say in 7 months, you're going to see some of them out there. Maybe less than that. And also, the coolest thing. Think about this. When we all know, you roll up on base camp, the production semis tied into the 53s. Imagine when now the loudest vehicles on the road will make no sounds. And then when you're taking that 53 and you're tying it into that actual semi, and you now have a mobile power plant moving down the street that's got its own charging station, you may never have to plug that truck in again. You just keep it tied into. So that's what I'm looking at as far as, that's why I say autonomous power is what I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
So every vehicle that's electric will be tied into all of the other equipment on the set, on location, tied into your electric generators, tied into the building, tied into wherever.
Well, even further than that, so I was just at a studio last week, and we're already talking about and planning exactly what, studios by nature are large real estate developments. And when you think about it, let's talk about any studio. You've got sometimes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these vehicles on the lot. And right now, they're all tied in. That's for you.
Yeah.
They're all tied in to the lot. But within a certain amount of time, they'll be tied in. But number one, they're not pulling from your grid anymore. So they are not consuming power from your grid. And number two, we can grid sell back to you. So all that free power that we're just catching and producing, we can send it back to you now. So the issue, or the new dynamic is going to be with all of the new builds and stuff is, number one, are you metering the lot to take the power, the free power, the amazing free power that we just give to you, to take that in? Or number two, are you adding battery backup to store it there as well? Either or do both, which is amazing.
So you're saying that this could even be a revenue generating model for you and your fleet. You're rethinking now, you become a utility because you've got 8 megawatts of power in your one base camp, and you've got multiple base camps on a studio lot.
Absolutely. We call it VAS, like vehicle as a service, or V2G, vehicle to grid. These vehicles are going to become mobile power plants, and they can produce, if you want to say a profit center for the studio, they'll produce it in two ways. Number one, depending on how you want to quantify that power that you're getting back, the studio can monetize that however they like. Number two, we're creating carbon credits for them. So you've got two new revenue streams that have never really been activated yet in our business. And that is that you can bet within 3 years. I mean, we're going to be doing it, but, I don't know about other vendors, but we're going to be doing it. There's no reason not to, because the tech is there now and it's free power.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're saying this will evolve in 3 years, 5 years?
It's going to...
How long is this? Yeah.
The time is going to be determined by two really core things. And number one, it's going to be studio mandates. Like the studio will be able to, I think it's going to be wonderful for them to begin to mandate this, like have a phased mandate rollout. Very similar to how, let's say, government says by 2031, we need all of these semis to be this. Any studio can put that in place now. Any major could say, hey, we, Studio X, by 2031, we are never going to rent these types of, class 2 vehicles again, or, and you start phasing that in. But the other factor, so I think that could accelerate it, but also, the other factor is going to be technology. And technology always determines how fast some of these things really change. So for instance, like take back when, Jobs raised up the iPhone. Yeah. That changed everything because there was a quantifiably superior product out there, sorry, Android, whether...
I love my BlackBerry.
I know you do. But you understand like what I'm saying, in the fact that like, it changed the phone forever. And every other company, you either had to understand how to make something similar to that, or so I think, on the private sector side, you're going to see both of those. But I mean, the studio can mandate it, as well as, let those individuals who are, companies like mine, or anyone else in the field, hopefully everyone subscribes to it and sees it to a place where, hey, we're doing something it's not only really good for you commercially, obviously, but just the simple pleasure of walking on a set and it's just silent and there's no fumes and there's no anything. It's like, and by the way, like it's really cool, just to watch these things run and they make not a sound. Like that's what I tell people. It's like, just wait till you see a 53 footer pull up that doesn't make a sound. I mean, it's
And generating its own electricity.
and it's generating its own power. Yeah, you could drive it from LA to, let's say, New York.
Andre, I think you forgot one thing too. What about the stars of the productions and the talent? Like, I mean, that is an opportunity to drive. They want to be in the trailers. They want to demand the trailers. How much of a role does that play? Because the studios still are not mandating that everything go green.
Great point. Any star can say, I want this, but that's a actually fantastic point that commonly gets overlooked, But like we were talking about earlier, the part that shocked me the most when I got into the environmental side of clean transportation was, again, how dirty it actually was. And when I'm saying that in respect to being inside of the actual trailer. And, we were one of the, LEED doesn't certify mobile assets, but there is a group called TRA certification out of Elkhart, Indiana, and when we took the painstaking, process of sourcing plywood from this area and doing it was because the VOC levels inside the trailer were just astronomical. But on the talent side, for them, it's creature comfort. They're living in these things day after day after day. And so, what you want it to be, think about it. When you're sitting in a vehicle that is the exact same decibel level as this, that's pretty enjoyable. Or, you don't have that tailpipe of that, let's say, Onan 7 kW diesel generator burning right off the side with off-gassing, which is, again, dangerous, but you enhance the human experience, So what we found were that the more of these vehicles we started building, the more top level talent began to come, and then and even guys like James Cameron and John Landau and those guys, who were who came and said, I want I want these for me personally, on set. For me, that was like a dream come true, because here's a guy who really, and I sat there talking about how every part was built, and he's like, I love it, and he's like, man, you're in the wrong business. You need to, he's like, go into a different, bigger business or something, and we were kind of joking about it, but, he kept those vehicles there for 2.6 years, never burning an ounce of fuel, never being plugged in. Mm-hmm. And at times we would tie other things into it. I had to drop the tanks of fuel, and because we kept an onboard generator on it, just because of the fact that some coordinators, they get scared, they get nervous, or they want double or triple redundancies. So we would just keep it there, but I'd have to go in there at times and drop the fuel out of the vehicle because it went bad. So we just stopped putting it in, and didn't even put the plugs back into the generators, because there was no reason to.
So interesting. Okay, so to wrap us out, we ask all our guests this question. If you were to create a new playbook and guiding principles about sustainability and entertainment, what would be first on your list?
Education. Education would be first. I think that, you gotta teach people that, number one, these things exist. They're there, and then number two, you do that through data, and you do that through, platforms like this are amazing. For me, this is a godsend. I wish that, like we were doing this in 2013 and 14. But it is amazing that it's here and it's real, and everyone's learning. Like now everyone, that even walks out of here today will know what's possible on production vehicles moving forward. But also just, so I think education is unbelievably important. I think mandates are, for someone like myself that was trying to build, I went and I knocked down every studio door back in the day, like 14 and 15 and 16, because what I wanted to get these vehicles into the marketplace. We needed additional capital. So I wasn't necessarily even looking for investment from the studio. I was looking for that support of saying, hey, give me a long form agreement that guarantees, even at worst, 30% utilization, and I can go take this out and build 500 more of these, Mm-hmm. But at that time, it was so new. It just wasn't something that, people were willing to take that risk on. But I think, moving forward, I would say if I ran a major studio, across the board for me, my initiatives would be in sustainability. It would be across every department. And I would have phase outs of when this is the last time we need to be, because you also need to give those private sector companies time to, it's a high CapEx sometimes, so, give them time to evolve with you. But before you know it, it'll be done. Hopefully everything would be cleaner, and more sustainable, and it's completely possible.
And film production has to do it. Entertainment has to do it. If we can't do this, then we got way bigger issues to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, we have the biggest voice.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the single biggest voice, and so that's what I used to always love, is that even any time that, any of our clients were in the vehicles, if they would tweet something out or post something about how positive their experience was, I mean, that was just fuel for
Love 'em
us.
Love them up.
Love 'em up.
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely, I mean, we loved that because, again, during those times, we weren't getting paid any more to build these. They were more expensive for us. The rental rate was still the same, but I think now that the quantifiable data is there, like our new vehicles coming off the line, they can tell you exactly what your carbon reduction is, what the fuel ratios would have been, because they're going to create carbon credits. So as well, but we also just want the data.
Yeah.
We want to know, and we want to learn how to make it even better and better and better. So I always say, we love vehicles. We love what we do. Production happens to be our medium that we're building these for. And because I've come out of the entertainment industry all my life, I wanted the entertainment industry to hold the flag and lead the charge, and so I see it. I mean, every day right now, we're excited, I'm excited for people to, I was telling one of the gentlemen in the audience earlier, Ryan, I said, just wait. And how cool it's going to be when you see, because I'm going to drive that Tesla onto the lot, that semi with that 53, and I'm going to pull it up, and you won't even hear it coming. I'm just going to let it sit there and just run for days.
We'll have like one of those weird, like electric vehicle hums.
Oh, I mean, we may do that for safety, but silence is beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Awesome.
The industry is evolving, folks.
Yeah,
you heard it here.
Do we have?
No, we're on it.
We have two questions. Two
questions?
questions.
Is that right?
All right.
Oh,
we'll do.
okay.
We got
Anybody
time
have
for
any
two questions
questions
from the audience for Andre. Anybody have a question?
If not, you can talk to him in the hallway. Or
we got a couple.
Oh, I see one in the back. Hey, Ryan.
We got Ryan there.
I share your enthusiasm, Andre. I just wanted to get your kind of opinion on where you see hydrogen playing into this whole picture in the next 10 years. Is it something that you see as being viable as the cost of what quote unquote green hydrogen comes down? Because you talk about solar and that potentially being used in, with an electrolyzer, for example. How do you see that playing out?
Hydrogen is amazing. I love it. When we were trying to create, let's say some form of hybrid asset that could, even if we had worst case scenario, catastrophic failure of the PV system or, batteries or anything like that, what would we run it on that still maintain, carbon-free environment? So we did a lot of research on hydrogen. And the most difficult thing with hydrogen is just the distribution network. It's just getting it. It's just literally finding it. We were one of the first fleets to run renewable diesel. We were running 2014. I had 80% of the fleet running on this stuff called dynamic fuels, which was recycled chicken fat. So we were always looking at any of these substrates. I'm a big fan of it. I think if we can make it more readily available, and have, just the distribution of it be easier, because that's the only thing that, it's even things like propane are easier to find. People, you can get it almost on corner street, but that's the only part. I hope that you've got some companies like Nikola and stuff who are building hybrid battery hydrogen semis and stuff, and building the actual production plants of it. But it's a fantastic fuel.
All right. Any other questions? One more.
My answer was partially given by the last person. My question for you was, what's next? We know lithium is not the best way to go because of mining, the mining situation, what it's doing to the planet. And so is hydrogen the next thing, do you think? Or is there another thing that none of us know about yet that's just being whispered about as a potential to take over from the...
Amazing question, and I say I try to keep as, quote, up to speed as possible on everything out there. And I think, while lithium may not be, I guess, quote, the cleanest, I think that it's going to, there's different compositions that'll get better and cleaner. But right now, and I mean, I say this, and I'll say this next statement very, very, we haven't found really any new power source in the past 100 years that hasn't been here already. So I think we need to do better at really focusing on how can we find and invent new forms of power that are cleaner and better. If I research it all the time, and I haven't, besides cold fusion, when you see that, but I don't know, right? To be honest, I wish I did, or if you find out, please tell me, because I'm investing.
I'd like to add one quick point to that one. I think, show us a better, cheaper, cleaner battery chemistry, and we'll include it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just an evolution of things. I mean, there's a sodium-ion battery out there, right? So it's happening. I just have note on hydrogen. I think where you can have battery and solar powered and you can charge from the clean grid, I think you're going to be using batteries. But where you need larger, longer sustained loads, that's where your hydrogen generator comes in. So I think it's a mix. There's not one thing that's necessarily better than the other. And I think that's a general rule for our entire global energy system as we reimagine it over the next 100 years.
I did have one second question, if you don't mind. These new vehicles with all the energy on top, is there any concern and is there any testing being done about leakage at all? Is there any sort of the equivalent of an EMF or something like that that there's a concern?
Are you referring to perforating the roof line?
Yeah, like getting into the vehicle or like being surrounded by...
Another great question. I mean, these are the things
Test for
I
these
geek out
things?
on all day. Like how do you actually apply, photovoltaics or any of the other apparatus without perforating the roof line? Because you get, we do not perforate the roof line. And that took a lot of time and effort to figure out how to do that. And because of the exact point that you just made, which was the moment you perforate the roof line and you get any form of leaks or any form of condensation in there, you can sometimes render the vehicle useless, because then you get mold and you get, just things growing in it that you can't use the vehicle anymore. So I'm fortunate. I work with some really amazing, truck and trailer builders who are artisans of their path, professionals and we talk about this all the time. And it is key, all the way down to the, that it impacts the R value of the vehicle, and so great question.
All right, everyone, we're going to wrap it out. Thank you for
thank you, guys.
participating in this episode of The Tie-In.